Okay, welcome to this video walkthrough of assignment number 2 for CSC 494-598, Designing Virtual Worlds for Learning. In this assignment, we're going to complete the project from Chapter 2 in the Unity Game Development Essentials book. So let's walk through it really quick. In this video lesson, obviously I'll be not covering everything that's in the chapter. I'll just cover the highlights. You will want to go through the chapter itself carefully, in particular paying attention to the discussion around programming as it's implemented in Unity using either C# or JavaScript. In the lessons I do for class, I will tend to use JavaScript just because that's what I'm used to, but you're welcome to use either in your own project. So I'll start off by creating a new project, remembering where you save it and giving it a name that will make sense when you submit the project so that I can identify you. The best way to do it is to name it with your own name and then the assignment name. So this is assign 2. For this project, you actually don't need to import any packages. So here we are looking at the Unity interface. You're already familiar with it from our first assignment where you made your tropical island. It may look a little bit different in terms of its layout. I've set mine up specifically for this video lesson, but it will of course have all of the same elements, just in a different location. So in this assignment we're going to create an interactive wall of blocks, and then we're going to have a script that allows us to shoot cannonballs at that wall and to have the cannonballs knock into those blocks and knock them over. So to start off with, let's create the floor on which we will place our wall. To do that, go to the Hierarchy view and click on Create, then choose Cube. Once you've created the cube, you'll see it appear both in your scene view and you will also see it in your hierarchy. I'm going to change the name of it to Floor, since that's what it's going to be, is our floor. And I'm going to check its position to make sure that I've got it at 000 inside my world. Looking over into the scene view, when you position the transform, the X, Y, and Z coordinates for your floor object, if you can no longer see it in the scene view, you can quickly find it again simply by making sure you've got whatever the object is you want to look at selected in the hierarchy, then moving your mouse over the scene view, hit the F key on your keyboard, and then you'll get a close-up view of that object. So I'll move out a little bit and rotate around so I can see it nicely. I'm going to change the size of our floor to make it more like a floor. So following the book, we'll make the X scale of our floor object be 100, and we'll make the Z scale also be 100, and that will give us a nice size floor. I'm zooming out a little bit so we can see it. It's also a good idea before we begin to build up our wall to include some lighting inside our project. On our previous assignment we used directional lighting, which was the sun. This time we're going to use a different kind of lighting so you can start to get a sense of how these work differently. I'm going to go up to Game Object on the menu and choose Create Other, and this time the kind of light I'm going to use is a point light. When I add in that point light, you'll see that things look pretty dark. If I move the Y coordinate in the transform for that point object up a little, you'll see that it creates this sort of pool of light on our floor. But it's not very strong yet, so we're going to do a couple things. First, we're going to position the Y coordinate for our point light to be at 20. Then we're going to expand the range for that light up to 40 so that it will now create a large pool of light onto our floor. Okay. Your scene should look something like the one I've got here. Now let's go ahead and create the first brick for our brick wall. I'm going to repeat the same thing I did a few minutes ago to create my floor. I'm going to go to the hierarchy and choose Create and choose Cube. I'm going to rename my cube to be brick, and I'm going to set its Y position to be 1, and X and Z will be 0, and the scale for now is going to be 1, 1, 1, just as it is. Using the same trick I used a minute ago, making sure I've got brick selected in the hierarchy, moving my mouse over the scene view and hitting F, I can zoom right in on my brick to see that it's sort of sitting a little bit above the floor. I'd like to give some material to this brick so that it has a little bit more visual interest. To do that, I'm going to go to the project view and choose Create, and I'm going to create a material that can then be applied to that brick. When I select material, it will appear in my list of assets for the project, simply named New Material. So let's rename it. Whatever color it is you're going to use for your material, you can name it. I'm going to follow the book, which calls it red, and then I'm going to come to the inspector for this material and select the color picker and then choose a red color. Now I've got a red color for my material. I've got it named as red. If I want to apply it now to my brick, I can simply drag it from the asset view over and drop it on top of that brick. And just like that, I've now got a brick with some color. The next thing we're going to do is we want to have our wall react to realistic physics. So when our cannonball smacks into the wall, those bricks that we're going to create will get knocked over. Before we go on, I want to show you what this looks like. So I'm going to reposition the brick that I've created. I'm going to raise its Y position. Well, you can raise it to whatever you want, but I'm following what we've got in the book, so I'll raise it up to 15. Zoom out a little so I can see it. And I'm going to rotate it a bit too. I'll rotate the Y-axis to 40. Once I've done that, if I've got it how do I want to say? If I've got a nice view of both the brick and the floor in my room, I'm going to test out the physics that we're about to apply to our brick by hitting play. Now we need to apply those physics first, so let's do that. To apply physics to the brick, make sure that you've got it selected in the hierarchy, then go to Component and Physics and choose Rigid Body. Adding a rigid body to a game object will connect it to Unity's physics engine. And you'll see now in the inspector that in the rigid body section, your object now has mass and drag. You can choose to have it use gravity, and it has some built-in collision detection as well. To test this out, I'm going to do one more thing. I've got a nice view in my scene looking at both the cube and the floor. However, if I hit play right now, what will happen, well, I'll show you, we'll move back to the camera view, and so we do get it, in this case, luckily, a view of our cube because our camera happened to be placed in the right location. But what I'd like to be able to do is view that falling brick from the current location of my view. So to do that, I can position my view just as I like it, then come over and go to Game Object and choose Align with View, making sure first that I select the main camera in the hierarchy view. And what this will do is it will move the camera to the current view of the scene. Boom. There we go. Now when I hit play, I'll see from the current view that brick dropping down, colliding with the floor, and acting in a realistic way. So once I've done that, I'm going to move my brick back to its original location. I'll set the rotation back to 0. And now I'd like to begin to duplicate the existing brick to create the first ground layer for my wall. To duplicate the brick that we've already created, I'm on a Windows machine. I'm going to hold down the Control key with the brick selected in the hierarchy and do Control D or Command D if I'm on Macintosh. And in doing that, I will quickly duplicate the brick that I've already created, you'll see there are now 2 bricks in the hierarchy, and it creates an exact duplicate in the exact same location. Now we're going to use the snap tool with our transform tool in order to snap this copy of the object right next to the existing one. So again, on the Windows computer, I'm going to hold down the control key, and then I'm going to grab my arrow to move, and it will snap it right next to the existing brick. So I can repeat this if I select both of the existing bricks and then do Control D. I create a pair of bricks, hold down the Control key again, and then drag out, and then I'll get 4. And I'm going to create a whole row of these. So I can quickly just use duplicate again, hold down Control and so on, and drag them out, snapping each time until I get 10. So go ahead and do this on yours. Alright, now I've got 10 bricks all lined up, snapped together beautifully. To make it easier now to create the rest of the rows of my wall, I'm going to group all of the bricks that I've created so far, just to organize them better. So to organize these objects, I'm going to come up to my Game Object item on the menu and choose Create Empty. You'll see now in the hierarchy I've got a game object that is sort of nothing. I'm going to name this game object Wall. Then I'm going to select all of the bricks I've created so far in the hierarchy, and I'm going to drag them underneath this game object that I just created, making sure that the name I give it actually sticks. And now you'll see that all of those bricks that I've created are all in a folder called Wall. Now that I've got all those created, I can simply select all of them, choose to duplicate them again, use my snap tool, and very quickly I can now create more layers of this wall. So create a collection of layers of your wall. You can make it as high as you like. I'm going to make mine be 8 layers high. Alright, I've created 8 layers to my wall. I want to position this wall for use with the little mini game that we're about to create. So selecting the parent folder for our wall object, the wall one, I'm going to come over to the position, and I'm going to move the X to 4.5, and I'm going to move the Y to 0.5. That will place it down a little. Then I'll choose -1 for our Z position. Okay, if I zoom in, I can see that in my case that's making the bricks be a little bit in the floor. So I want to position them right on the floor. So I'll choose 1, which will, in my case, lay them right on the floor. You can also take the whole thing and move it up and down to see how this is going to work. Basically, you're just going to position it, and then we're going to move our main camera in relationship to this wall object. Alright, let's move our camera now. So select the camera, and you can see currently we're sort of looking down on it because we were testing the physics a few minutes ago when we moved our camera view. Now we're going to reposition and re-rotate our camera. One way to do the initial movement is to simply come over to the transform and choose Reset. That will move our camera back to 0, and reset all of the rotation as well. So let's change its position now. We'll move the X to 4, we'll move the Y to 3, and we'll move the Z to -15. In doing so, you'll now see in the camera preview that you're looking straight on at the wall. Now we're going to add a script that we will attach to our main camera to allow the player to move the camera back and forth and to shoot cannonballs at the wall. To save time, I've created a basic script that you can use to do this and place it on the course Blackboard site. To create the script within Unity, go to the project view, choose Create, and select JavaScript in this case, since the script I've put on the Blackboard site is JavaScript. Give it a name. I'm going to call it Shooter. And open it up. by double-clicking on it. And what will occur is that MonoDevelop will open. It comes with Unity, and you can use this scripting environment to write all of the code for your program. You can also use different scripting tools if you like, but for now we'll just use the one that comes built into Unity. I'm going to go into the Blackboard site, and I'm going to go to Unity Units folder. And we're currently working on Unit 3, Introduction to Programming and Prefab. So I'll open up that, and I'll come down and find the shooter script. Okay, here it is. I'm just going to grab and copy and paste all of that code into my script, replacing any code that's already in there. So let me talk briefly through what we've got inside this script. I've got 3 variables declared. We've got a bullet, which is going to be a rigid body. We've got the power variable, which is going to be the strength at which our cannonballs fire at the wall. And we've got the speed. Then we've got an update function that's going to be occurring sort of every step that the program is running in Unity. We'll use this to detect where to move and where our camera is positioned at the moment. So here we're gathering some control inputs from the user, and then we're going to use that to move our camera. And then here we're checking to see whether or not the player is clicking the fire button, which is going to be default to the left mouse key. And if so, we're going to instantiate a cannonball. That's what we're doing here. Position it according to where the camera is currently located. And then we're going to set its speed and power, and we're going to shoot it. So once I've got all that set, I can choose to save my script, and then we'll go and give it a try. So save it, and close out, and come back into Unity. Back inside Unity, you can see now that the code we've pasted in is now part of our shooter script. I'm going to take that script now, and I'm going to drag it up to the hierarchy, and I'm going to drop it right on top of our main camera. Let's test out what we've got so far. By hitting play, you'll see here we are looking at our wall. And now if I move my camera using the left and right arrows and the up and down arrows, I can actually reposition my view. Now you'll see I haven't built in any sort of checks to see whether or not we're going down below the floor, or if I'm getting up to the point where I can't see my wall anymore, and so on. But we've got a wall there, and you can see that it's sort of swaying a little bit. That's because the physics are acting upon each of those bricks. What we don't have yet is any way to fire at our wall. In fact, if I hit my left button on my mouse, I get an error because I haven't assigned a projectile yet to one of our variables in our script. It's looking for a bullet, essentially, a cannonball, so we need to create that object now. Let's do that next. Just as we did when we created our original floor, we're going to go to the hierarchy and choose Create. This time, though, we're going to choose a sphere. Then I'm going to use the same sort of F key. I'll select the sphere in the hierarchy, hit F, and we'll zoom down in on it. You'll see it's sitting right by the wall. We're going to create and apply a material to this sphere, which I'm going to rename, I'll call it Bullet. Come down to the project folder, choose Create, choose Material, give that material a name. If you want to give it some different color, this time I'll name it Bullet Color. And for myself, I'll give it a nice sort of yellowish color. And I'll drag that over and drop it on top of my bullet. We're going to add a rigid body component so that our bullet will have some physics, making sure that I've selected the bullet in the hierarchy. Component and physics and rigid body. Now that I've created the object, I need to convert this game object into a prefab. And then what I'll be able to do is grab that prefab through code and instantiate the prefab as an object inside my game. So to do that, it's pretty simple. I can simply take the bullet as it is in the hierarchy, click, drag it on down into the assets, and immediately by doing that, our bullet object gets converted into a prefab. And you will know it's a prefab in part by the little icon next to it. If you get a cube-looking icon, that indicates that it is a prefab object now. Once I've created it as a prefab, I can actually delete the object itself out of the scene, and it still exists here inside my project folder. Next, we need to associate that bullet prefab that we just created with the shooter script that we made earlier. So I'll come and select on my main camera, and I'll look over in the inspector down to the section where it lists the public variables associated with our shooter script. We can see that we've got the power variable, we've got the move speed variable, and we are looking for a bullet, a rigid body. So I'll drag my bullet prefab and drop it over there. I'll leave the power and move speed settings as is, and I'll give it a try. Here's my wall. I can move back and forth. I can click, and now I get to shoot a bullet. Each time I shoot one of these bullets at the wall, you can see it creates another bullet. I can just shoot zillions of them, and you'll see they all drop out, and I can knock over my wall using these. You can experiment with different levels of power and move speed. I set power to, say, 3,000, move speed to 10. This move speed is how fast I'm moving left and right and up and down. And the power, of course, is the amount of force in my bullets. So you can see I get a whole lot of force if I raise it up. And I can knock over my wall, no problem. Once you have everything working, I encourage you to play around with your scene. Add lights, create different materials that you can put onto your bricks, change the size of the bricks, change the force, the shape of your cannonballs. Be creative. Add a skybox. Do whatever you like to make this project your own before submitting it as an assignment. However, when you do go to submit it, here's what I'd like you to do. Be sure to go to the build settings. We're going to submit it as a web player. Click on the switch platform. And then you're going to need to add the current scene, making sure that you give it a name first. So I'll call it, in my case, I'll call it wall shoot. Make sure that the scene that you've just created is inside your build settings. Click on build and run. Choose where it is you're going to save your files. And then I can test it out. Here's my wall, and when I move around, I can move right, left, up and down. I can fire bullets at it and watch as my wall gets destroyed. All right. Of course, there are tons of other things you could do with this, and I invite you to do them. When you go to submit your assignment, you're going to submit both the Unity 3D file and the HTML file, checking to make sure that everything works.